power, ego, authority. These three words can either protect a community or completely destroy it. And in today's story, you're about to see exactly what happens when a man in uniform, blinded by arrogance, dares to cross a line no one thought he would ever touch. Imagine this: a police officer so hungry for control that he begins abusing his badge, humiliating citizens, and thinking he can get away with anything. Now imagine that same arrogance pushing him to arrest the one person he should have never touched, the chief of police's own son. Yes, you heard that right. In broad daylight, in front of cameras and witnesses, this cop marched up, slapped on the cuffs, and dragged away the chief's son as if he were a criminal. The reason? Not justice. Not truth. But ego. Pure ego. But here's the twist: what he thought would earn him power and respect turned into his ultimate downfall. Because this entire stunt, this entire abuse of authority, didn't just stay hidden. It was recorded, it spread like wildfire, and in the end, karma came knocking faster than he ever imagined. This is not just a story about law and order, it's about pride, betrayal, and the shocking way arrogance can backfire when the whole world is watching. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear is the unforgettable tale of an arrogant cop, a chief's son, and the instant karma that changed everything. The town wasn't huge. It wasn't the kind of place where you could get lost in a sea of strangers or disappear in the noise of a big city. No, this was the kind of community where everyone knew your name, your family, and even your secrets. And in such a place, power wasn't just about what badge you wore or what title you carried, it was about reputation. At the top of that reputation pyramid stood Chief Daniel Carter. A man respected for his fairness, feared for his discipline, and admired for his integrity. He had spent decades serving the community, and his name carried weight. When Chief Carter walked into a room, silence followed. But behind the iron exterior of the chief was something softer: his son, Alex Carter. Alex was young, ambitious, and far from perfect, but he wasn't the spoiled stereotype you'd expect from a chief's son. If anything, he wanted to prove himself outside his father's shadow. He was a college student with plans, with friends, and a personality that made people trust him. Sure, he had privilege, but he didn't wear it on his sleeve. And then, there was Officer Rick Dawson. Rick was everything Alex wasn't. Loud. Intimidating. Overconfident. The kind of cop who strutted around town like he owned it, flashing his badge more like a weapon than a responsibility. People whispered about his arrogance, how he barked orders, how he never missed a chance to belittle someone, how he thrived on fear. He wasn't respected, he was tolerated. But to Rick, that didn't matter. He believed fear was stronger than respect. The tension between Rick and the Carter family had been simmering for months. Rick always felt overshadowed by the chief's authority, as if no matter how many arrests he made, he'd never be more than just another officer. He craved recognition. He wanted to stand out. And deep down, he resented Alex, not for anything Alex had done, but simply because of who Alex was. So when Rick spotted Alex hanging out with friends one evening, laughing and carefree, something inside him twisted. He didn't see a young man living his life. He saw an opportunity. An opening. A way to strike at the chief without ever touching him directly. That night, it began small. A random stop. A few questions asked with too much aggression. A warning laced with sarcasm. Alex brushed it off at first, not realizing that Rick wasn't just doing his job, he was laying the foundation for something much darker. The signs of conflict were faint, almost invisible to the casual eye. But the truth was, a storm was brewing. A storm fueled by arrogance, envy, and the dangerous mix of power and pride. And soon, it would erupt in a way that nobody could ignore. The first real clash came on a Friday evening. The town square was busy, families strolling, kids playing, and college students laughing as they moved between the diner and the coffee shop. Alex was among them, sitting with two of his friends on the steps of the library, sipping sodas and talking about weekend plans. And then Rick appeared. His patrol car screeched to a halt a little too close to the curb. The way he stepped out, heavy boots echoing on the pavement, it wasn't about checking on safety. It was about making a statement. He walked straight toward Alex, ignoring the startled looks from the crowd. "Alex Carter," Rick barked, loud enough for everyone within 50 feet to hear. "What are you doing loitering here?" Alex blinked. "Loitering? I'm just sitting with my friends." Rick's lips curled into a smirk. "Sitting with your friends? Looks more like disturbing the peace to me." The exchange was humiliating. People paused to watch, whispering among themselves. Alex's friends tried to interject, but Rick silenced them with a glare. He wrote something in his notepad, tore the paper, and handed Alex a citation for public disturbance. It was absurd. But it was just the beginning. Over the next week, Rick seemed to appear everywhere Alex went. If Alex was driving, Rick would pull him over for rolling through a stop sign, even though the intersection had been empty. If Alex was walking, Rick would stop him for a random ID check, treating him like a stranger in his own hometown. Each time, Rick made sure there were people watching. Each time, Alex felt his dignity chipped away piece by piece. At first, Alex tried to laugh it off. "He's just bored," he told his friends. "Looking for something to do." But inside, it stung. He knew this wasn't routine policing. This was targeted. This was personal. By the third week, Alex's frustration was boiling. One night, Rick pulled him over again, this time accusing him of reckless driving when Alex hadn't even been speeding. "Step out of the car," Rick ordered, his tone sharp. Alex hesitated. "For what? I didn't do anything wrong." "That's for me to decide," Rick sneered, hand resting on his holster. The power dynamic was clear, Alex was trapped. If he resisted, even verbally, Rick could twist the narrative. If he complied, he'd look guilty. Either way, Rick won. Alex stepped out, jaw clenched, trying to keep his cool. Rick patted him down in full view of passing cars. The humiliation was unbearable. Someone pulled out their phone and began recording. Alex wanted to protest, but he also knew this footage could either save him or destroy him, depending on how Rick spun the story. The harassment escalated further. Rick began spreading rumors around town that Alex was trouble, that he was using his dad's position to get away with things. People who had once greeted Alex with smiles now looked at him with cautious eyes. The final straw came on a sunny afternoon outside the local diner. Alex was grabbing lunch with his girlfriend when Rick stormed in. Without hesitation, he grabbed Alex by the arm and pulled him to his feet. "You're under arrest," Rick announced loudly. The diner went silent. Alex's girlfriend gasped, trying to intervene, but Rick shoved her aside. "For what?" Alex demanded, struggling to keep his voice steady. Rick smirked. "Disorderly conduct. Resisting an officer. Take your pick." He twisted Alex's arms behind his back and slapped the cuffs on. The clatter of metal echoed through the diner like a death sentence. Customers sat frozen, some whispering, others pulling out their phones to record. Alex's face burned with shame. His heart pounded with anger. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong. He knew this was personal. But as Rick dragged him out of the diner, all Alex could think about was the weight of the cuffs and the humiliation of the crowd stares. The video was already spreading online before they reached the station. And in that moment, Alex realized this wasn't just harassment anymore. This was war. The holding cell was colder than Alex had expected. Concrete walls, steel bars, and a single bench that smelled faintly of bleach. He sat there, staring at the ground, trying to process what had just happened. Only hours ago, he had been laughing with his girlfriend over burgers and fries. Now, he was behind bars, treated like a criminal, his wrists still raw from the handcuffs Rick had tightened far more than necessary. Rick had made sure to write up a report that painted Alex as a violent, disrespectful troublemaker. According to the paperwork, Alex had refused lawful commands, verbally assaulted an officer, and created a public disturbance. To anyone reading it, the words painted a picture of guilt. But Alex knew the truth. Everyone inside that diner knew the truth. And more importantly, the cameras knew the truth. When Chief Carter received the call, he felt his stomach twist. The moment the dispatcher said his son's name, his pulse quickened. He was a seasoned officer, trained to keep calm in chaos, but this wasn't just any case, this was his son. At first, doubt gnawed at him. Could Alex really have lost his temper? Could he have pushed too far? But deep down, he knew his boy. Alex wasn't perfect, but he wasn't reckless. Not like this. Still, protocol bound him. He couldn't simply march into the station and tear up the paperwork. That would look like favoritism. And Rick had chosen his battlefield carefully. He knew exactly how much pressure this situation would put on the chief. Meanwhile, the town buzzed with divided opinions. On social media, the diner footage began circulating. One clip showed Rick dragging Alex out, another showed him shoving Alex's girlfriend aside. But without full context, people argued endlessly in the comments. "Looks like the chief's kid finally got what he deserved," one user wrote. "Abuse of power. That cop is out of control," another shot back. Within hours, the video racked up thousands of views, and the hashtag Justice for Alex began trending locally. The town was split right down the middle. Inside the station, Rick strutted like a king. He walked past the cells with his chest puffed out, sneering at Alex. "Bet Daddy's real proud of you now," he taunted. Funny how quick respect disappears when you're in cuffs. Alex bit his tongue. He wanted to shout, to fight back, to call Rick out for the liar he was. But he remembered the phones in the diner. People had recorded everything. If he exploded now, Rick would twist it again. All Alex could do was wait, and hope the truth surfaced before Rick buried him completely. Chief Carter spent the night reviewing everything he could. Witness statements, the official report, the timeline. None of it added up. Rick's account was riddled with inconsistencies. And then, an officer quietly slipped a USB drive onto his desk. "Sir," the officer whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "You should see this. People are posting it online already." Chief Carter clicked play. The diner scene unfolded on his screen, Alex sitting calmly, eating his lunch, laughing with his girlfriend. Then Rick storming in, shouting, grabbing, shoving. The entire escalation was caught on camera, crystal clear. The chief's jaw tightened. His son hadn't resisted. He hadn't disturbed the peace. He hadn't done a thing wrong. And suddenly, the anger that had been simmering in his chest ignited into a burning flame. This wasn't just a personal attack. This was an officer under his command abusing the badge, humiliating his family, and dragging the town's trust in the department through the mud. Rick thought he had won. But the truth was about to hit him harder than he ever imagined. The next morning, the station buzzed with unusual tension. Officers whispered in corners, phones vibrated non-stop, and the chief's office door remained firmly shut. Rick, however, walked through the halls like a man who had conquered a kingdom. He was already imagining the headlines, "Chief's son arrested." He thought it would be his ticket to respect, his proof that he wasn't afraid to act, no matter who the suspect was. But what Rick didn't know was that the tide had already turned. Chief Carter emerged from his office with a file in one hand and a thumb drive in the other. His face was stone cold, unreadable, but his eyes burned with quiet fury. He walked into the briefing room, where a dozen officers sat waiting. Rick was there too, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin. "Gentlemen," the chief began, voice steady but sharp, "we need to review the events of yesterday." Rick smirked. "Gladly, sir. I made sure to keep everything by the book." The chief's lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. He slid the thumb drive into the projector. The screen flickered, and suddenly, the diner scene filled the room. Everyone watched in silence. Alex laughing. Alex eating. Alex calm. Then Rick storming in, his voice sharp and accusatory. The shove, the handcuffs, the unnecessary force. It played out frame by frame, irrefutable and damning. By the time the video ended, the room was silent. Every officer stared at Rick, not with admiration, but with disgust. Chief Carter's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "This," he said firmly, "is not policing. This is abuse. This is misconduct. And this is a disgrace to the badge we wear." Rick's smugness faltered. His face flushed red as he stammered, that video doesn't show the whole story." He was resisting. Resisting? The chief's tone snapped like a whip. Resisting what? His lunch? His girlfriend? The only thing he resisted was your arrogance. The room erupted with murmurs. Officers who had once kept quiet now nodded, their loyalty clearly shifting. Rick's arrogance, once his shield, had turned into the very weapon that exposed him. And then came the words Rick never thought he'd hear. "Officer Rick Dawson," Chief Carter declared, standing tall, "you are hereby relieved of duty, effective immediately. Place your badge and service weapon on the table." Rick froze. You can't do this. I was just... Badge. Now." The command was final, unshakable. Rick's hands trembled as he pulled the badge from his chest and the gun from his holster, laying them down with a clatter that echoed like a death sentence. But the humiliation didn't end there. Two internal affairs officers stepped forward, handcuffs ready. For abuse of power, falsifying reports, and unlawful arrest, one officer announced, "You're under arrest." The irony struck like lightning. Rick, the man who loved dragging others into custody, now stood in their place. His wrists locked in steel, his head bowed not in pride but in shame. The same cameras that had captured his arrogance now captured his downfall. Alex, standing just outside the briefing room with his father's permission, watched the scene unfold. His heart raced, a mix of relief and vindication. For weeks, he had endured humiliation. For days, he had been painted as a criminal. And now, in a single moment, the truth had shattered the lies. Rick was led away, his protests drowned out by the weight of justice. Instant karma had arrived. Swift, brutal, and undeniable. The news spread faster than wildfire. By the afternoon, every diner table, barbershop chair, and grocery store line was buzzing with the same story: the arrogant cop who thought he could arrest the chief's son had been arrested himself. For Alex, walking through town felt different now. The same people who had once looked at him with suspicion now nodded with respect. Some even apologized quietly, admitting they had doubted him. Alex didn't gloat, he simply nodded back, knowing the truth had finally spoken louder than the lies. At home, Chief Carter sat with his son at the kitchen table. The tension that had hung between them for days finally lifted. "You handled yourself better than most grown men would have," the chief said, pride softening his voice. "You stayed calm. You trusted the truth. And in the end, it saved you." Alex exhaled, shoulders finally relaxing. "I didn't think anyone would believe me. Not against him." His father placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "The badge is meant to protect, not intimidate. Men like Rick forget that. But they never last." Meanwhile, Rick's world crumbled. Stripped of his badge, facing charges for misconduct and abuse of power, his name became synonymous with disgrace. The same arrogance that once made him feel untouchable now ensured he had no allies left. The community, once divided, found unity in the lesson the ordeal had delivered: no one, no matter their position, was above the law or beneath its protection. And as for Alex, he carried forward not just relief but also a deeper understanding of his father's world. He had seen the cost of arrogance, the danger of unchecked power, and the strength it took to endure until justice prevailed. In the end, the story wasn't just about a cop's downfall or a chief's son's vindication. It was about truth. About the way arrogance eventually devours itself. About how, when the cameras roll and the world is watching, karma doesn't hesitate. Because power can be borrowed. Respect can be forced. But justice? Justice always finds its way home. And that, my friends, is how arrogance met its match. A cop who thought he could twist the truth, humiliate others, and hide behind his badge ended up in the very handcuffs he once abused. Instant karma doesn't wait for the right time, it strikes the moment pride blinds justice. But let me ask you this, if you were in Alex's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have fought back? Kept silent? Or trusted that the truth would rise to the surface? I want to hear your thoughts, drop them in the comments below. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, make sure to smash that like button. It tells me you want more stories where justice wins, and arrogance falls flat. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that no one is above the law, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next powerful tale of karma in action. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we shine a light on the truth. And trust me, the next story waiting for you is just as unforgettable. So stay tuned. Justice always finds a way.